she kept persisting about asking for my phone number. So I said, well, you know how far it is from my dojo to Beverly Hills? I said, it's about 60 miles one way. And she goes, oh, well, I've never driven on the freeway. I said, you've never been on no, not by myself. I've never driven alone on the freeway. And I said, then I think it's not a good idea. Why would you ever think about taking classes I said, there's not one karate instructor I met that I would drive 60 miles to take lessons from. Right? I'm really confused. Like, what in the world are you talking about? And Chuck Norris is definitely one of the very best instructors, as well as people, as well as champion. So you cannot get any better than Chuck Norris. So, but she just said, well, can I just have you? And then she started the defensive thing, right? So you don't want me to come down and take classes? I said, no, it's not that. I said, but it's just not practical. You take it from one of the best. It's very close to your house. It doesn't take you much time. So anyway, I said, here's my number. She said, do you mind if I call you? I said, no, you can call if you want. So when she called one time, about a week later, I was on the mat having a private lesson. And we have instructions to the people that help in the dojo. If anybody calls when I'm on the mat to speak with me, I'm not available. Just take their number or their name, and I'll call them after the class is over. Well, in the middle of the class, Katie Sievers, who was one of my female black belts that was handling the telephone, she gets the phone, and I'm having a private, and she goes, oh, Mr. Stone, and she's holding the mouthpiece on the phone. Somebody's here to talk to you. I said, Katie, no, I can't talk to her, whoever it is. I'm on a private lesson. So she goes, but it's Priscilla Presley. And I made the mistake, sometimes I'm so naive and stupid. I said, I don't care who it is, just tell her to call back. So Priscilla must have heard me say that. So
oh my gosh.
After Priscilla calls back again later, and then when I took the call and she was talking to me and she says, how come you're so rude to me? I said, what did I do? She said, I called you. Why didn't you take my call? I said, oh, we just have a policy about not being interrupted while we're having a private lesson. So I said, it was no real big inconvenience. It was only about 15 minutes that you had to wait. And she was huffed about that, like, oh, how dare you? So when do you have classes? I said, all the way through to Friday night. So she said, can I stop by one of the nights? I said, sure. And she said, what night is best? I said, any night you want. So they came on the Friday night. Her and Jess, it was Joni Esposito. They came, and then right after, we have a policy on Friday nights, is after our workouts on Friday nights, all the senior students, we go to a pizza parlor right next door to the dojo, and we have pizza, beer, and salad. So I said, oh, listen, you guys better go. It's a long drive up. And she goes, well, where are you guys going? I said, we're just going to go next door for a pizza. So again, she invited herself like she always does. She said, oh, do you mind if we come along? And how can you say no? I said, yeah, of course. So they came and sat down and stayed with us pretty much the entire time until, we finally all had to leave and go home. And then she said, oh, do you mind if I come down and take a class? I said, you mean after that drive and everything, you still want to try and take a lesson? And she goes, yeah.
Oh.
So anyway, that's how everything started.
By telling the story, it's obvious to the listeners that she really liked you. And you were kind of naive about it, because being an instructor, you have so many students and everybody's always looking up to the instructor. So you probably kind of weren't paying too much attention. How long did she take classes with you or under you?
Well, when she started, she was, we were together for like 4 years. So from the time she started to take classes and come down to Orange County, and then we had an apartment. We ended up getting an apartment much later into the relationship in Belmont Shore. And then eventually got it when the word, imagine this, Keith. We were physically dating for over a year that nobody knew about it. Only my students. Now, if you talk about loyalty, that's loyalty. Nobody said anything to anyone.
You said Priscilla moved in with you. lived with you about 4 years with Lisa Marie. Did you stay in California, in California, did you move out?
No, we stayed in California. And again, maybe to dispel other people's perceptions about Elvis, there was some talk that I prevented Elvis from seeing Lisa. I mean, are you serious? I'm going to prevent Elvis from seeing his daughter? There's no way. With Elvis, Lisa was the most important thing. So for him, everything was about her security. So when we had that little apartment, it was just in the time that we were getting to know each other, which was, again, a year before anybody realized. It got to a point for her that she felt, here's the word, guilty and ashamed for what she felt like she was cheating and going behind Elvis's back. But her intention already, when she first saw me, she admitted years later, when she first saw me fight in Hawaii, at that moment she looked and she said, that's the guy I want. She admitted this years later. Priscilla wanted to get away. She wanted to find a way out. And maybe, I'm just saying maybe, she saw in me the only person that Elvis respected because of Ed Parker talking about me so much, that I was a legitimate champion, that I was a badass in the eyes of Elvis himself, that said it to her and said it to Red West and Sonny West, how good I am because of what Ed Parker talks about me. So all of this build-up was that she felt maybe it's a guy like this. Because listen, we're going to be honest, right? I mean, we will always be honest. I was not good looking. I was not wealthy. I was not famous. That is the truth. She could have found a million other guys in Beverly Hills, much wealthier, much more good looking, have more fame than I ever had. So that is not the reason. Her choosing had to do with something other than money, fame, and good looks in me that she thought she could use and needed to be leverage and a crowbar to get out of her present relationship. Now, I've been accused of this right away. My ex-wife said, you know, she's using you to get away from Elvis. And of course, my ego said, of course not. Desperate to get out of that situation. Just look at the movie she made about her life. You talk about, and that's what she puts on the screen. So can you imagine how desperate she really must have been? Can you imagine you're 14, 15, 16, you're living at the King's Mansion, and these other beautiful women that he's entertaining, having sex with, having affairs with? What does that do for her ego? You talk about crush. She doesn't feel she even exists. You talk about beauty. She's definitely one of the prettiest women in the world at that time. But she didn't feel beautiful at all. She felt ugly. She felt like he didn't want to touch her. I mean, what can that do for a young woman? So we have to put everything in order. We cannot just get stuck. And I understand. We can, listen, as a karate teacher, I can only teach you what I know. That's it. I can't teach you what I don't know. And my knowledge in what I can teach you is limited to what I know. So we have to keep everything in proportion.
Well, let me ask you this. I've read accounts of her as well that she really gave you a lot of praise about, you know, she felt trapped in that relationship with Elvis, and then you opened up her eyes, you know, and showed her a whole different world that she wasn't exposed to before. So, you know, she had nice things to say that way. But during your relationship, how did you get along with her? Was it a happy relationship?
Yes, fantastic.
Let's finish up then with Priscilla before we move on to another topic. How did the relationship end, and are you still friends? Was it a friendly?
4 years to me, I was absolutely blessed. Why? One of the prettiest women in the world chose me for whatever reason, whatever her motive, her agenda, her intentions, that's not my business. So for whatever reason, I was blessed to have her. The other thing is that when I left my wife and my 6-year-old, Lisa was also 6 years old. So living with Lisa allowed me an opportunity to have a daughter, quote unquote, not my daughter, but a person like my daughter, the same age that I had an opportunity to be with for 4 years that I wasn't with my own daughter. So this was a blessing for me. All of our situations, I have never had a fight or an argument with Priscilla. This is the truth. Never.
That's incredible.
Now, why did we leave? It's a very interesting question. But listen, if you have half a brain and two cells in your brain that you can rub together to have a thought, the idea is life is based on energy. Life is based on cycles and rhythms. We all have it in the way we breathe, the way we move. It's all about cycles and rhythm. If you don't understand who you are, if you don't know who you are, if you don't know how you connect to the natural world and to the universal intelligence, if you don't have an understanding of that, you will always have problems. Human beings do that. I'll talk about it later. But anyway, the idea is this, that when we separated because I also understood. I made a statement that the worst time in my life was the last year with Priscilla. The worst time in my life ever was with her. Now, how can I say that and still feel it was okay? Because I went through a transition like she did. I was growing and learning as she was. We just got to a point when whatever her reason and agenda was, she now started to move off in that direction. When she started to feel comfortable about herself, she was now divorced. She was now free. People in Hollywood knew she was free. She was available. She opened up Biz and Bo, the clothing store, so she had more contact with people. Listen to this. Priscilla never introduced me to a friend of hers other than Joanne. I've never met a friend of Priscilla in the 4 years I've been with her. All of her friends were my friends. My world became her world. And until we moved to Beverly Hills and she slowly got reintroduced into that lifestyle that she knew and that she wanted to be a part of, she always wanted to be an actress. So all of these things, if people can understand this, open up your heart and mind. It's a natural transition we all make, if we're honest. It's a natural evolution. So when our energy finished in the romantic way that she wanted to have the relationship, when that ended, then she was moving off in a direction that she wanted to go, to make movies, become a celebrity, to do all this. She couldn't have done it with me. Why? I hated that I hated Hollywood. These guys are so full of BS. Let's lunch. Let's do this. They're so phony. I want nothing to do with it. So the last year of our relationship, when she was going off in that direction, that's what I was exposed to. And I didn't like it at all. I was happy to leave. So we parted ways. And it was not, even after we left, we would still call and talk to each other. Sometimes 5 and 6 months after we had separated. So how bad could it have been? There was never ever screaming, yelling, nothing. Really, I'm not joking. So the 4 years I've been blessed to be with her and Lisa. And that's what I write about. So if people want gossip, buy another book.
Tell me about your book. When do you predict that it'll be ready, be published?
In June.
In June. And
yes.
Will it be on Amazon? Are you self-publishing? Do you have a publisher? How would we look for it? How can we purchase one?
Yeah, I will self-publish on Amazon.
I got you. Well, good. Well, listen, I thank you so much for sharing all of this personal stuff that the whole world wants to know about with my audience. And I want to end this session by just thanking you for being on the show today, because we have another session to do with you with whole different topics. And I kind of want to make this finite and just deal with the book issue. So thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yes, my